The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show and the Summer of 82 at 40 series. Cue it, press.
The Summer of 82 at 40.
All right. So we could be a weekend look at the movies released during the summer of that year. As always, along from the journey, he was the man behind Mendelson's memos. Now he is just one of the many folks over at the lovely Forbes. Scott Mendelson.
Always a pleasure to be back.
All right.
Thank
Scott,
you for having me as always.
Oh, of course. Scott, this episode we'll be crossing over from July to August. This is the first weekend we've had that was technically 2 months. So we're July 30th, 31st, and August 1st that weekend going on through. But as we turn July into our final month of August, just want to let you guys know there's been a Patreon this whole time here that you can visit and check out. Sometimes I just pop every episode for a week in on the Sunday before they air on Monday, so you can get them a little bit early. With Scott and I, of course, as we record this, we might have hit the goal of $20 to do The Sword and the Sorcerer and Porky's at the end of all this. So there's that. There's no requirement for Patreon. You're not missing out on any audio. And it's just sort of if you want to say, hey, keep it up, guys, or you know what? You've been doing a lot of rentals this summer. I'd like to help you reimburse them because, I mean, there have been some movies that
dozens and dozens of dollars spent.
Dozens. Yeah. So, yeah, the Patreon.
Donate to the Patreon or I'm sending Brandon a bill.
All right. Patreon.com/Brandon Peters Show. Please donate fast and soon. So anyways, let's head on as we do always the beginning, the news of the moment.
It's the news of the moment.
Nice voice when you live on Skid Row, Mr. Bushnick.
Suspense.
Little red dots all over the floor.
And romance. It's bone-chilling. It's spine-tingling. It's a musical. It's a nifty laugh riot, entertaining as it is exotic. Little Shop of Horrors. Don't shop around. Go see it at the Westwood Playhouse.
All right. On July 26th this week, Karen Diane Baldwin, 18 years old, of Canada, was crowned Miss Universe. So we've had Miss America, Teen Miss USA, and Miss Universe all in one summer each month. On July 27th, Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's first visit to the U.S. in almost 11 years. July 27th, Alan Menken and Howard Ashman's musical Little Shop of Horrors opens off-Broadway at the Orpheum Theater in New York City.
Little shop of horrors, little shop of terror. I don't know the rest of the words.
Later in the decade would be adapted with Rick Moranis and Steve Martin.
One of these days I need to rewatch.
Yeah. In July 30th, the USSR performs underground nuclear test. Those are always fun. There's a lot of they have noted a lot of nuclear tests during this time.
Good thing Russia is cool now.
Right. Cool. July 31st, Finland, Italy, Germany, Austria, and France formed the American European Football Federation, the AEFF.
That's less scary than I thought you were going with that.
Right. Yeah, it built up and you're like, uh-oh. Nuclear test to football.
It's just football.
All right. On August 1st, American Greg Louganis becomes the first diver to score 752.67 in 11 dives in winning the 3-meter springboard gold world championships in Guayaquil, Ecuador. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. On August 1st, also heavy Israeli air bombardment on Beirut. Oh. war. There was
The
also
thing is, Israel is cool now.
right.
I'm Jewish. I can say that.
Also, that swimming contest, same one. East German swimmer Petra Schneider breaks her own 400-meter medley world record by 19 seconds. And lastly, August 1st, after the first 13 runnings of the Midsummer Classic, Darrell Waltrip becomes the first driver to win the Talladega 500 twice.
Mazel.
Yeah. Keep that engine running. We have passing away in this week, Vladimir K. Zworykin, the Russian. He's a Russian-American inventor. He made he was involved in the development of television's cathode ray tube. So the TV, basically. And Harold Sakata, the actor, he passed away. Birthdays this week. Yvonne Strahovski, cult leader Allison Mack, and DeMarcus Ware. She wasn't a leader. She was just a groomer.
For once, that word is being used properly. Thank you.
Somebody say. Who knew that theme song was a cry for help from her victims? Who knew?
As someone who watched Smallville from the very start, I can see it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, stop
Smallville.
talking before I get canceled.
From Smallville to Big Time, our first movie is Forced Vengeance.
Bum, 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 bum.
For Josh Randall, Hong Kong was just a stopover on the way home from Nam.
That's supposed to be for me.
But soon he was captivated by the charm of the people, at least most of the people. Randall doesn't have to look for trouble. He is trouble. Chuck Norris is Forced Vengeance. Rated R.
Starts tomorrow at selected theaters and drive-ins. Consult newspaper for the...
Directed by James Fargo. Written by Franklin Thompson and James Fargo. Starring Chuck Norris, Mary Louise Weller, Camilla Griggs, and Michael Cavanaugh. A casino security guard is forced into violence when the Hong Kong mob threatens his friends. So this one comes to us. Yes, it's a Chuck Norris movie, but director James Fargo, he's like an Eastwood guy because he directed The Enforcer, Every Which Way But Loose, and he was a production manager. He did like Joe Kidd, High Plains Drifter, Outlaw Josie Wales. But he also directed Voyage of the Rock Aliens, which is a great B movie, folks. It's a musical. Craig Sheffer has a song called Nature of the Beast on there, which check it out, folks. It's dynamite. But this guy also directed episodes Scarecrow, Mrs. King, Hunter, 90210. His unit production manager days go back to Jaws. He did a second unit directing on the Andromeda Strain, High Plains Drifter, Sugarland Express, Eiger Sanction. So he's a real deal like around this time. Those are big titles. Big directors. He's assistant directing Eastwood, Spielberg, multiple Spielbergs, I must say. It was two. Chuck Norris, this and Silent Rage come out in 82. Lone Wolf McQuaid is the next year. This one's following Eye for an Eye and The Octagon, which my screenwriting professor was the first AD on that movie, Skip Surgine. He's probably not listening to this podcast, but hey, Skip. He also, he was sold to it. Like, that was a cool cred, but we were told, with the class to sell it on was like, oh, well, he was the first AD on Norma Ray. That was how you take the class. And he was always late to class. And then the head of the department came one day. It's like, you guys can send your complaints if you want. They gave us one of those speeches. So, but cool guy. I liked him. Even though we got 45-minute class, we mostly were taught for 20 minutes every day, but hey, all good. Weller, the writer, lots of TV, Cue the Winged Serpent, Blood Tide. He would guest on Quincy and then call it a career. That's all he's got. So this Forced Vengeance, the biggest budgeted Chuck Norris film at the time. Scott, Forced Vengeance that you're not welcoming, it's forced upon you.
It was, you just said, yeah, it was the biggest budgeted film, and frankly, it looks it. It's a polished relatively big, seemingly shot on location, and sorry, a cat just walked in. Authentic looking action drama.
Mm-hmm.
It has big sets, big locations, lots of extras, things that we used to take for granted before the streaming era. It's not a good movie. I don't want to oversell it, but it's clearly a case of Norris trying to make a movie where he gets to act at least as much as he gets to kick people. There's actually very little action until the last 20, 25 minutes. There are periodic bursts of plot-specific violence. Even then, I would say up until the last 20 minutes when everything goes to hell, it's a pretty restrained picture. It's R-rated, don't get me wrong, but it's not wallowing in blood and gore. It's not as extreme as, to my recollection, Silent Rage, which was about, I think, a genetically enhanced serial killer or something like that.
No, wait, no. The silent Chuck Norris' serial killer movie is
sorry, I'm getting these mixed up, obviously. No, let me see.
That one is Hero and the Terror. That's the, I believe that's the slasher one.
Right.
Yep.
This one's just about a mentally ill man who gets granted near indestructibility. But anyway, different movie. This one, I mean, Chuck Norris is not a superb thespian. He never was. But this is clearly a film where he's in his comfort zone. He is acting as much as the movie requires of him. And I think there's certainly an intent to present a character that, even though he's a collector for a casino boss and occasionally has to break a thumb or otherwise hurt somebody, he's a relatively good person who makes an effort to do his job with minimal violence.
Right.
And the strange conundrum about Chuck Norris, and I felt this way at least since I knew who he was when I was a kid, is that obviously conservative, he's very politically conservative. He's very right wing. And I think, in later years, he's certainly gotten a bit more extreme in terms of being kind of a bigot. But if you go back to his films in the 80s and 90s and Texas Ranger, he certainly presents himself as a model of what you consider compassionate conservatism, in that his films and shows are very much not just not racist, but anti-racist. He made a film called Top Dog about a police dog where the bad guys are racist neo-Nazi militia people trying to blow up a building. It had the bad luck of opening like right after the Oklahoma City federal bombing.
Yeah, they used to be
against those.
They used to be against those people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ever watched Walker Texas Ranger, again, the film or the show, yes, it's aimed at your stereotypical grandpas watching CBS on Saturday night, but it's very don't be a racist asshole. And it's a classic, a lot of these pictures and a lot of these shows are classic examples of how stuff like that didn't used to be political. It used to be you made your rough and tumble hero sympathetic by having him beat up a racist or having him beat up a Nazi. Or, now if you're lucky, maybe he rescues a puppy. And without giving this film too much credit, it's certainly, he makes a comment just out of nowhere where, he responds to a gay bashing joke by saying, the smartest man I ever met was a homosexual. And again, in 1982, that was just good writing. I don't think it was trying to plant any flags in the sand. Now, as far as being an action film, honestly, it's pretty weak in that sense. It's mostly just him periodically kicking people, along with, in those 5 to 20 minutes, the bad guys going sort of hog wild on Norris's friends and family. There is a rather graphic sexually, rape murder in this picture.
Yeah, I was
it's just off screen, but
there
not
we
quite.
are. Yeah, I was like,
and
the aftermath is like,
the aftermath is plain as day. There's full on nudity, and his black best friend gets rather horribly murdered. But again, that's the genre. That's what often happens in these films. Either at the end of the second act or right before the climax, the bad guys invade the good guys' hideout and and make their mark. Maybe they kidnap the girlfriend, maybe they kill somebody, whatever. But now the hero is pissed off and now he's really primed to go kick some ass in the end.
And he's losing the fight until your woman was good, my man.
Yeah, that's the best of those. and by best, it's of course horribly offensive, is I think Bloodsport, where it's implied that the evil kickboxer had raped Jean-Claude Van Damme's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the fight, he says something effective. I don't remember her name. Forgive me. Like, you bleed like Shen V. She good fuck. And, and again, this is horrible, but it's also like, well, okay. And of course, Van Damme, and then wins the day. So again, obviously in a vacuum, this is all very offensive content, but this is the genre. These films were not expected to be moral arbiters of society.
Right.
At their best, they were the bad. The good guy may not be all that good, but he's better than the bad guys.
Yeah,
he's the necessary evil that we have standing against us in chaos.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sorry,
part
I've
of
been
it.
rambling. Go for
No,
it.
no. Part of it is like when they make these movies and stuff, they're not. Yeah, like you said, they're not trying to be a moral arbiter of society, but they're also like, how far can we push things? How bad can we make these people? We got to make them badder than the last movie. And that's the thing. That doesn't mean they condone those actions. They're saying this is horrible shit. Like, this shouldn't happen. Like, it's not condoned. And this movie shouldn't be watched with like, oh, I hope I learned something special about it. No, you want to see Chuck Norris kick some ass or whatever. And yeah, like, though, even if this movie, like, the idea to me of Chuck Norris has always been better than actually sitting down and watching Chuck Norris movies, because this one was weird. This also had a weird thing where the opening credits had the shadow boxing sequence that I was like, oh, that's a interesting opening credits. And I was like, oh no, it was a scene from the movie from later. And then they're going to show it to us again in entirety when it happens.
Yeah.
Oh, so it was like the 2 days earlier type thing. So, and he's given some like dynamite lines in these movies, and he can't deliver them at all. Like anybody else, you would laugh your ass off or something like that. And he gets these and he's like, you realize, Chuck, that's the punchline. Play it up. He's like, looks like he lit a match before he forgot to, like cleared the room or something. And he narrates in this, and it's like, oh geez, and it's full of cliches. Like the opening line is Los Angeles, the city of angels, so they say. Like, wow,
that's the thing.
Guess
I do
what
find
movie
funny
that
about this,
is?
because
Yeah.
it tries to, it sort of like it sometimes thinks that it's a film noir, even though that's not remotely what it
no,
is.
yeah, they try to add that. And then the scene where his girlfriend, where we first meet her on their little houseboat, holy crap, everything about it's horrendous. Like, it is bad. Like, she only exists to serve him, like, from this dialogue. Like, she's all about him, and it's just like, he's the greatest guy or whatever. And she's just like, oh my gosh, she's in skimpy stuff in the daytime. Like, it is lingerie wear while I'm like, I get if she was in a swimming suit or something, and she's just wanting to bone when he gets home, but he is just, ooh, I'm too tired, man. And all her lines are just subservient or like just fiend in heat. And then it ends with him like, I'm gonna go to bed. He's like, but I still got time for this. And it's just, it's parody levels bad. Yeah, and I know I'm not supposed to treat this like high art, but even for these type of movies, I'm like, it's just noticeable. They just did not give a fuck about the woman character.
And the part of the problem is Norris is not a particularly good actor.
No, he's not.
The one movie that I think he was genuinely good in is Andrew Davis's Code of Silence.
Yeah, no, Code of Silence, that's one. That might be that and Lone Wolf McQuaid, like, I think is best. Yeah, like
Delta Force is solid because he's got Lee Marvin to bounce off and keep him above water.
And the missing in actions are what they are. But I mean,
the thing about Code of Silence, that's another example of a macho action movie that on its surface, its politics are comparatively, progressive.
Yeah.
You have a diabolical CIA was secretly dealing drugs on the side conspiracy. It's the same. Basically, it's very similar plot to Andrew Davis's Above the Law, which was Steven Seagal's first big movie. I think Henry Silva's the bad guy in both of them.
Probably, yeah.
And it says something how good of a director Andrew Davis is, that he got a good performance out of Chuck Norris and 2 good performances out of Steven Seagal.
Right.
And that's I remember when Above the Law came out, even beyond who is the Steven Seagal person? He is interesting. Again, it sort of was seen as sort of a different kind of cop movie where you had the cop was, he was happily married and was a family man and went to church and, lashed out against corruption and, Code of Silence, again, there's a subplot in Code of Silence where Chuck Norris goes to town against the police department for covering up a racially motivated murder.
Yeah.
And again, these films aren't trying to make a point other than that's bad, dummies. Don't do that.
Right.
And this goes back to a big overall point, which is that when we had more movies that are, smaller or bigger or needing to be less all-encompassing, they could afford to be about the issues of the day.
Right.
Because, if you offended a viewer, it wouldn't matter.
Right. Right.
And I say this a lot, is I think pop culture has suffered by, 20 years worth of blockbusters that aren't even as racially aware as Wild Wild West.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie, like, I think, we had between this Chuck Norris and we had the Challenge last week with Scott Glenn. I like the Challenge a lot better than this.
Oh, it's a better picture.
Yeah, much better. Lesser note, in the star department.
This might be a hot take, but Scott Glenn's a better actor than Chuck Norris.
Better actor, but I mean that one at least had some gore to it.
Yes.
Some interesting settings. There's some interesting Vegas type stuff they have here, but it's, I don't know, sitting watching. This is, Norris isn't a star performer, but like this ain't one of his better hours in terms of performance. I did find things funny here and there with this movie, like the Super Freak knockoff music that was in that one club. I was like, wait, this is Super Freak. Oh, but kind of not. Super Freak, but kind of not. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one to like power through, I guess, for us here.
Yeah, it's not essential. It's inessential Chuck Norris.
Inessential Chuck Norris, yes. We'll go from inessential Chuck Norris to inessential S.E. Hinton with Tex.
Stupid! Now, you just wait 1 minute, Kelly.
We have been waiting a week, man.
Kelly, keep it down, man. Come on, man.
Listen, I'm getting out of here. This guy's nuts.
What do you think you're doing?
I told you already, I'm leaving.
And he's gonna narc.
Oh,
He's gonna
you're not
narc.
gonna narc, Kelly. Come on, man.
You're not going nowhere, pal.
Kelly, it's cool, really. Come on, man.
All right, now hold it right there.
Our second film, directed by Tim Hunter, who this is his debut. He would do River's Edge next. Written by Charles S. Haas, who he wrote Tron this summer. He's on that Disney payroll, and this is Tim Hunter also wrote the script from a novel by S.E. Hinton, who also wrote The Outsiders and Rumblefish, which would come out in the following years, starring Matt Dillon, Meg Tilly, Jim Metzler, Emilio Estevez in his feature film debut, Bill McKinney and Francis Lee McCain. After their mother dies and their father leaves them, teenage brothers Tex and Mason McCormick struggle to make it on their own. This is for Meg Tilly. She had One Dark Night the same year, Psycho 2 and The Big Chill the next following year. McCain in here would be, she could be in, she was like the mom in Gremlins. She was in Footloose. She was grandma in Back to the Future. She'd have Stand By Me in that. She was like 80s. You feel the 80s when you see her as a motherly type role. She's a guidance counselor or something in this movie.
Yes.
This Tex was Disney's attempt at putting out more mature movies in the theater for people. This is Disney's in a weird spot here. Their animations aren't like they used to be. They're kind of, I don't know is what's his name taken over yet?
No, that's still a few years out.
Still a few years out. So this is a wild spot for Disney, but Tex is their first of, let's try to put some.
I assume you mean Katzenberg.
No,
or Eisner. Sorry.
Eisner. Yeah, Eisner.
Apologies.
So, yeah, Eisner.
I almost reenacted the plot of The Lion King.
Yes. But Scott, Tex.
Good movie. I liked it quite a bit for what it was. It's clearly an attempt by Disney to tell a somewhat more grounded, salt of the earth character drama about two, frankly, impoverished young men in quote unquote flyover country America. It wears its heart on its sleeve, but it's also there are moments where it flirts with being a little over the top. There's a strange crime moment starring a very young Zikzio Ivanik as a criminal hitchhiker. You would know him from such Homicide: Life on the Street.
Yep.
Damages. And I apologize if I mispronounced his
Live
name.
Free or Die Hard.
Yes.
Very small role.
The guy that I thought, he's got to be the mole, right? Why else did they put him in this movie? I guess he just wanted the easy paycheck. Oh, well. I saw that with Wendy, all those, like, he's the guy. I was wrong.
Yeah.
But anyway, good movie. It's obviously one of, alongside The Outsiders, and that was then, this was now. The other one that always, Rumblefish, where,
all starring Matt Dillon.
Oh God. The books that were written between 1967 and 1979 were sort of seminal in terms of their authentic and sympathetic portrait of that time in those parts of America. It's very well acted. It's very well staged. It's, and I know I've been saying this a lot over the last couple of months. It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's just a movie, but it's pretty good. And I think even then it sort of stood out as something surprise, especially from, a Disney live action film. I don't know if it was their first PG officially or not, but it certainly was one of their first PGs for like a drama. I don't know. Was a Black Hole PG? I'll have to look that up later. Anyway, if it wasn't their first PG, it was one of their first PGs. Yeah. And that was back, this was 3 years before the PG-13s. That actually meant something. And there's very light drug use. There's moments of potential violence. There's, it's not a rape scene by any stretch of the imagination, but you have the sympathetic hero that kind of goes a little too far with his love interest before she kind of puts him back. And again, it's handled with grace and maturity, and both parties come to, okay, sorry, whatever, and move on.
There's also the bombshell of him finding out, discovering that his father's not his father.
Yes, that his mother was unfaithful, but that he, the father kind of sort of did the right thing because he was in jail at the time.
Yeah,
anyway.
he had an understanding, and the mother, he didn't want the mother to feel guilty about it for her whole life. So,
and it's, again, there's not that much more to say about this movie other than it's a very good version of what it wants to be.
Yeah, I'm noticing that there's a lack of that I like about this era. There's a lot of, and through the 80s a bit too, the coming of age story taking place in smaller towns, Midwestern flyover states or whatever, and giving them an honest shake and not just the I need to get out of here type deal. And and I think that's partially because that's what was happening then, unfortunately. You had the first couple of years of Ronald Reagan, you had the recession, the various recessions and factories closing down, and basically Billy Joel's Allentown coming to life all across the country. And/or insert your favorite Bruce Springsteen song. Right. And I mean, there was Breaking Away a few years before this that was huge, and like a lot of things, and then Outsiders would be this way. There's Stand By Me, like, you have that just honest living there. And this is kind of where, like, I feel like the Stranger Things wants to pick up on where they're at and adding the horror stuff to it.
I agree with you, because that was always sort of the subtext in stuff like E.T. and to a lesser extent Poltergeist, because that family was pretty, a conventional, functional, economically viable, secure family. But there was sort of, it's no weird thing to say that a lot of the the Goonies and E.T. was also about the sort of the dissolution of the conventional family unit, for better or worse, and the struggles and challenges that the kids felt living through that. And I also think, frankly, that's something that, and again, it's not Stranger Things' job to recreate that particular part of it.
Right.
But I certainly think that that's an element, especially after the first season, that kind of gets short shrifted by the emphasis on fantasy elements. And again, that's the show.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
I don't expect Stranger Things to turn into The Outsiders.
Right.
Especially when I'm the one saying, you should just be watching The Outsiders. But yeah, I very much, this is one that slipped through the cracks for me.
Yeah, I've never
even
seen it
though I'm
before.
very aware of the author and I'm very aware of the genre. And as someone that was fortunate enough to grow up in, Northern Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
I found myself very sympathetic to the story, that someone that didn't have to have that kind of, that kind of childhood.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very conventional middle/upper middle class environment where, really, and this, is sort of my naivety. When I first saw Boys Don't Cry in late 1999,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't the whole, transgender stuff that got to me, because I was aware of that, and that's fine, live and let live, yada, yada, yada. But it was the very authentic portrayal of, a stereotypical rust bucket, one horse, nothing to do town that I found very striking.
Mm-hmm.
Because that to me was something that I had never really been exposed to, even in most of my pop culture, or I just was too young to be paying attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And text, one thing to go with that too is, like, I always like, Meg Tilly, somebody who just launches and gone by the end of the 80s, but like great performer to always check out, and always to see a performance I hadn't seen before of hers. Like she'd go on to Psycho too. They'd carry her too. So someone in this production, it's like, Tilly, bring her over here. But always good to see her around. And yeah, this one had an authenticity to it that I felt natural. Like it's really random to think this in spots, but there was a scene where Matt Dillon and his drug buddy they're in an apartment complex, and it looks like a real Midwestern apartment complex. And it didn't look like it was trying to fake or be phony or anything like that. I felt like I was watching something real. Like it's odd. It strikes me with that sequence and just that location of the shot, but just the way they shot it and the air, like I could feel and breathe that scene. And it was really interesting to come from this movie.
And I would say in the last decade or 20 years or so, and again, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I would say Alexander Payne is someone that's made a point to have that level of authenticity in his films.
Mm-hmm.
When dealing with that particular slice of life, even things like making sure that his cars have rear view windows.
Yeah.
Which in a lot of films, they take that out because it's easier to see the actor.
I mean, in the times we're living, just go shoot in the city it takes place in. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Like it helps the town. It helps the towns. We have good transportation, good communication, good delivery. Like in our easily connected society, like that should be happening. I mean, yeah. I mean, we shouldn't have to go to Georgia to make Kentucky. And
you are correct.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I know there are political beefs with leadership in other states and stuff that happen, but like, not everybody who lives there believes in that, votes for that, everything else, and it's a larger population that might not agree with that or something like that, and you hurt them too, like just because their leaders suck ass.
And the other issue is, even a decade ago, when we were still seeing mainstream films that were about quote unquote small town America, like Nebraska or Mud, or, and I'm stalling because the name of it is escaping me, Miles Teller and Shailene.
Oh, The Spectacular Now. I like that movie a lot.
Which is a terrific film.
I talked to the other day with Newers about that. I was like, you guys remember that? I love that movie, and I haven't thought about it since the year I saw it.
But the tragedy of it is that movies like that, even when they existed at a studio level, oftentimes they wouldn't play wide enough to actually make it to theaters in the cities they took place in.
Mm-hmm.
So when sometimes filmmakers and actors and whatever get in trouble online for saying we need more movies about real America, they're not wrong, because we do. But also, they're commercially speaking, when a lot of those movies would come out, they would play so limited that they'd be mostly frequented by people in big cities.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a danger when you when films like that are only consumed by people on the coast, stereotypically speaking, they become sort of like tourism, cinematic tourism, if that makes sense.
Makes
like,
sense.
I don't want to say like a zoo because that's too mean, but yeah. And conversely, when something that is pitched at quote unquote, middle America that is mainstream and does break out, then you get American Sniper.
Right.
And there are a lot of reasons why that movie broke out as well as it did, but that's one of them.
Right.
Lone Survivor, which is a smaller sized hit.
Mm-hmm.
When you have films aimed at that demographic, and maybe I'm talking about a world that no longer exists, because this is stuff that I wrote about, my first 2 years at Forbes, back when we had a thriving multiplex industry.
Right.
Before streaming, basically changed the game. But yeah, I mean, it's great when you make movies like Nebraska, as long as they actually play in Nebraska.
Yeah. Tex, a movie about Nebraska and a kid who wants to go to Indiana.
Fair enough.
Now, one of you is about to become Miss Universe. The other will be the first runner-up, a very important position, because if for any reason the winner cannot fulfill her obligation for the entire year, the first runner-up becomes Miss Universe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I shall read the name of the first runner-up and then Miss Universe. The first runner-up is Miss Guam. Miss Canada is Miss Universe. Miss Canada, Karen Diane Baldwin is Miss Universe.
Tex. All right. Speaking of nothing, we're just going to the TV ratings. Nielsen top 10 for this week. Number 1, the aforementioned A Miss Universe pageant on CBS. Number 2, Too Close for Comfort on ABC. Number 3, Three's Company, ABC. Number 4, 60 Minutes on CBS. Number 5, a rerun of WKRP in Cincinnati on CBS. Number 6, Trapper John, MD on CBS. Number 7, Jefferson's on CBS. Number 8, Heart to Heart on ABC. Number 9, Laverne and Shirley. And number 10, Give Me a Break. Scott, I had an interesting thing that has nothing to do with these shows.
Well, thank God.
When I'm searching for the clips and stuff when I'm editing, I found you remember I had a news story about taxi changing networks?
Yeah.
And one of them, the advertisement said, same great show, just a better network. Just now on a better network. I was like, dang, shots fired.
Brutal. My God.
I was like, wow, they would never do that today. Like, that's a bit harsh. It was a bit harsh, but yeah, same. And it was all happy. Same great show, just a better network. Just on a better network. It was I was like, shoot.
Wish that there was a little bit more gamesmanship in that sense. Like, I always, and this was like, God, 11 years ago or 10 years ago, because I'm an old man now. But I remember Sony released the second and spectacular trailer to Skyfall, attached to to the opening weekend of The Bourne Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I always felt that they should have aired that at the end of The Bourne Legacy,
right.
Saying, you want a spy action movie that doesn't suck?
Right.
Here you go.
Come back.
That's
what that reminds me of. Like the games, like Conan O'Brien hosted the Emmys once, and he was talking about how NBC, because NBC after like Friends left the air struggled a little bit. They're like used to have, just like NBC, number one network, must see TV. They've gone from that to in the top 5 for now. But yeah, kind of funny stuff. But yeah, that's our TV lineup. We're moving on now to our next film, The Last American Virgin.
Nobody has more fun than The Last American Virgin.
Me?
It's about hope.
Tonight can really be the big night.
And dreams. The highs and lows.
You're not going to get anything from me.
The ups and downs of growing up. The Last American Virgin, a comedy about friendship, love, and everything in between. The Last American Virgin. See it or be it. From Canon Release.
Now playing at theaters and drive-ins near you.
Directed by Boaz Davidson, written by Boaz Davidson, starring Lawrence Monason. I want to give Teddy Bear a kiss. Diane Franklin, Steve Anton, Joe Rubo, Louisa Moritz, Brian Peck, and Kimmy Robertson. Pizza delivery boy Gary, Loudmouth David, and Hunky Rick are 3 high school students out to lose their virginity any way they can. Gary falls for transfer student Karen, who gets involved with Rick. This is a remake of Boaz Davidson's film Lemon Popsicle, which came from another country.
Israel.
Israel, yes, where the Golden Globus originates for Canon Films. This was one of the big launchers for Canon Films. He also directed X-Ray, if you saw that one, the slasher movie. That's another Valentine's Day slasher movie. It's corny, it's funny. As a writer, he wrote Hot Resort, Delta Force 3, lots of schlocky genre TV. Nowadays, he's a second unit director, having worked on Neil LaBute's Wicker Man, the Conan, the Barbarian remake, and Expendables 2, doing second unit stuff. So this one has a notable thing that the soundtrack reportedly cost just as much as the movie.
That doesn't surprise me. It's a good soundtrack.
It's a killer. They bought already hits to put in the movie or on the soundtrack, and it is killer. Like this one has, like, I know we'll talk about Fast Times here in a couple weeks. This one can hold up to that with the soundtracks, at least. I'm that's arguable because you have REO Speedwagon's Keep on Loving You, Journey's Open Arms, Shake It Up by the Cars. Those get used a bunch. Just the Police are on there. It's big.
It's a terrific soundtrack. It's definitely playing in the American Graffiti game.
Right. So I love this movie, and it's a little bit trashier than like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and stuff. That's our prestige one we'll talk about in a few weeks. But there's a brutal honesty to this movie that I love. Like, I'm addicted to it. It's this is notable for having the biggest downer ending, but there's something about this movie that feels, I could imagine it offending people watching it today, but like that's what people are like this is an honest depiction of what's going on. I think
it is a more authentic version of the nerdy high school boy tries to get laid movie.
Yes.
And that includes some cringe elements. That's like, and
he's not the good. Like, he gets hurt and he takes it out. Like, he is. Yeah. It's honest. Like, it's He doesn't figure out the nice way to do things.
The striking thing about this is, of course, the last 15 minutes of the movie where the female lead gets pregnant with courtesy of the quote unquote bad boy and gets an abortion. And other than the lead of the film being there and helping raise money for that abortion because it's expensive,
he spends his own money on it.
Yeah. But the actual medical procedure is, very matter of fact.
Yeah.
There's no dilemma. There's no hand-wringing. There's no, and again, this was 40 years ago. We should be past this point, but we're clearly not. And it is very sad that we're still at a point where it's very rare in mainstream films for characters to get an abortion, whether guiltily or otherwise.
Yeah.
The last one I can remember that wasn't about abortion, Obvious Child comes to mind in 2014, Coach Carter in 2005, and anything else you can think of other than Dirty Dancing in 1987, which, the grim irony is, everyone loves Dirty Dancing and they remember the last 20 minutes of that movie.
Yeah.
The joke I always make is that they always talk about remaking Dirty Dancing, and then someone at Lionsgate actually watches the movie. He's like, oh shit, this movie's about an abortion. Abort. And, for the record, this is being recorded about a week and a half after we got word that Roe v. Wade might be being struck down. So we're all in a very bad mood about this kind of stuff right now.
Right.
And again, I think it's been a huge problem with pop culture over the last 20 years that films have gotten so big and the number of smaller films playing at a theatrical level have dwindled that you're not getting just mainstream run-of-the-mill movies that deal with this stuff in a matter-of-fact, non-judgmental way that might have slightly moved the needle.
Yeah.
You're never going to negotiate with, insane people or just downright cruel or evil people that want to do what they want to do because they know it will hurt people.
Right.
But in terms of general political consensus, more movies like this would have helped to skew the conversation for a medical procedure that at any given time 2/3 of the country is in favor of.
Right. Yeah. And you know, we got to mention that the friend that got her, it's his friend that got her pregnant. The friend that he told that, you know, he was interested in her, and his friend went for her anyway, because this guy wasn't going to make moves. We all know that, but we feel bad. And then, but then he steps up when it happens, because the friend's like, get away from me, whatever. When she tries to tell him she's pregnant, and he, you know, puts her through abortion, he finds a safe house for her to recover in, that they stay in, and they find each other then, and then sleep together. But she goes back to the friend at the end, which that happens. That happens.
You know, you can jokingly call this friend zone the movie.
Right.
But again, it's an authentic, realistic ending for that kind of story.
And it's Diane Franklin, so we get it. We get his, you know, easily.
And you know, there's a cultural conversation about. There's always a cultural conversation about how romantic comedies and princess fantasies have skewed expectations in terms of the girls and women that grew up consuming them.
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's maybe not as much damage done, but certainly some damage done in terms of the, you know, shy, nerdy outcast gets the girl by being a nice guy at the end kind of movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, I don't think these films are harmful or problematic or evil in a vacuum, but I think when every movie is Can't Hardly Wait, you know, that creates expectations.
I think too, like, one of the things I like, and I'm not going to say this movie portrays women in some like magnificent light, but the guys are like obvious pigs in this movie when it happens, but the girls, they're allowed to be fun, promiscuous, and make their own dumb decisions. Like the girls at the beginning that they bring home or bring the house, like they want to do drugs. They want to, like, that's fun. They're not, and they are a reflectant of our main guys. Like it was the perfect three girls to bring back with them, because they're just as dopey as they're a mirror image of the guys we have. And the girls are allowed, Diane Franklin's allowed to be herself, make her own decisions, and, you know, make the dumb one if she wants to. It's her own thing. And the one thing with the guy, you know, the main character of this goes on to play Teddy in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, who we all know because this is run that through your computer thing. But his viciousness in it is to distract his friend away from Diane Franklin. He's not like trying to hurt him, but he knows his friend's not a, you know, loyal, you know, faithful guy or whatever. And he gets what he asked for by doing all this. But I mean, they resort to like sleeping with prostitutes. They all get crabs at one point, and they have a pool scene that's pretty funny.
I was slightly amused by the doctor physician. I was like, crabs at your age? What the hell?
Yeah. But it plays funny. There is some lost in translation stuff that wound up stuck in this movie. Like when he goes to visit her after she has the abortion, he brings like a Christmas tree and some bag of oranges, which that's a carryover from Lemon Popsicle, the original film. So somebody didn't think Americans would probably bring flowers or something. But
popsicles are delicious.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that he brings a Christmas tree and some bag. Maybe it was a bag of lemons. I don't know, but otherwise, this movie just works and it's funny. It's not long.
No, it's 90 minutes.
And it's a heartbreaker in many ways. It's thought-provoking a bit. It makes you laugh. And it's got a killer score. Like I don't know that I'd seen this before or something, but when the Blu-ray came out from Olive Films, I got it for review. I was like, I'll pop. This is probably some Canon trash. And I was like really smitten by it. I was like, holy crap, this feels real. Maybe it's because of old age looking back and being able to reflect on my experience in life and seeing a lot of like, this movie got like was like honest about a lot of things that most movies would hold back on or embellish. It just very, very honest movie about teens, which might be too much for some people.
Well, if you depending on what you're looking for, there, it does kind of pull the rug out from under you right at the last minute. That's not a criticism. I think that's one reason why it works and why it works as art. But it ends on a much more serious note than I'd say the preceding 70 minutes or so have established. For better or worse. And again, I think that's to its credit as a piece of art. But in terms of, what do people think they're going to get when they put on this picture? I don't know. I don't think the title helps. I think the title makes it sound like some kind of Porky's knockoff.
Right. Yeah. That's probably the idea, to probably get a gotcha title with some of these movies, like horror movies and comedies, is like, let's put Tricky Dicks. That's what we'll call this one. Tricky Dicks. That's what they would, like, oh, that's Tricky Dicks. I bet it's funny. Might see some boobs too. Like, that's what and you get that with this, but you get a lot of naked dudes too, like butts probably. I don't think did we see any wiener in this movie?
Honestly, I don't recall.
Gotcha. That's not European, so probably not. But yeah, though, like, if you don't have REO Speedwagon's "Keep on Loving You" in your head after seeing this movie, because they were proud to get that song.
Oh yeah, it's also funny how on the nose some of the song choices are.
Oh yeah, the one what's the one they
"Open Arms" pops up right at the exact right moment to sort of qualify as musical exposition.
There's that one. Is that like an Alan Parker song or something? I can't, but like that one shows up, and that one's the most on the nose thing in there. But no, this is a high recommend for me if you haven't seen it. Teen movies.
It's a solid picture.
Yeah, and Canon Films. This is one of their first big hits, and they would go on to just take Chuck Norris from the previous movie we talked about and go to town, making stuff with him and Charles Bronson. But they wouldn't really get into these comedies too much after this.
Go figure.
Yeah, they did.
Maybe if they had, kept making movies like this along with the schlock, maybe history would have been very different.
Yeah, Troma went on the sex comedy.
Yeah.
Bandwagon is what they did.
I mean, instead they became, from the studio that brought you The Last American Virgin.
Yeah.
Masters of the Universe.
Right, exactly.
Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
First.
Discount edition.
First, do you like The Last American Virgin? Now, Ninja. Or Ninja Attack, or what? They made like Enter the Ninja.
The American Ninja. I don't know if that's them or not.
Yeah. No, yes, it is. American Ninja is them. Yeah, American Ninja, Enter the Ninja with Franco Nero as a ninja. And they did that. Who was that one guy? They made a lot of ninja films with.
I watched the first 2 American Ninja movies last summer before Snake Eyes.
2 is hilarious. It's great.
2 is interesting. Yeah, I think 1 is what it.
It's fine.
And I again, getting back to what we discussed on the very first episode of this podcast, this is $1 million movie that looks a lot bigger than it is, partially just because it's all visually coherent.
Yeah.
In a way that we used to take for granted.
Well, yeah, it's weird because there was just that scene where they're in the pool and stuff, and I'm like, this looks like a big movie. Whereas today, you'd be like, this looks like TV blown up on the big screen. Like,
yeah.
And this is quote unquote a junky, cheapy film, but it looks like cinema. For The Last American Virgin.
American Top 40.
Once a week with AT40, and you know how your favorite songs are doing across the USA, from the rocky coast of Maine to the sandy shores of Hawaii.
But speaking of killer soundtracks, Casey Kasem had one this week with his top 10. Number 1 this week, stealing the spot, Scott. It's the Eye of the Tiger.
And the Thrill of a Fight.
And the Thrill of a Fight by Survivor. I'm going counting up this week. Instead of counting down. Number 2 is Rosanna by Toto, holding strong. Also holding strong, Hurt So Good by John Cougar. Number 4, Hold Me by Fleetwood Mac. That one's staying still. Abracadabra by the Steve Miller Band moves up to number 5. Chicago jumps in from number 11 to number 6 with Hard to Say I'm Sorry. That was the song from Summer Lovers, Scott. It's all coming together. Number 7, Don't You Want Me, The Human League. Number 8, jumping in here, Air Supply has arrived with Even the Nights Are Better Number 9, Only the Lonely by the Motel stands pat, and Keep the Fire Burning dropping in at number 10 from REO Speedwagon, who had a song in a movie we talked about this week. All right. And Rod Stewart, he's a guy who has a song in a movie this week, but not in the top 10. He's part of Night Shift.
When Bill told Chuck he wanted to start an escort service in the city morgue, Chuck was reluctant.
Are you going to change your mind?
But soon everyone was dying to get in.
There are women with strange men, and we are making money from that.
Is this a great country or what?
This is a morgue. You're partying in a morgue.
Night Shift, rated R. Starts Friday. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
Directed by Ron Howard, who had been off Happy Days for about 2 years at this point. It's his second feature film. He'd done like 3 TV movies between this and Grand Theft Auto, which he did for Carmen. Splash was his next movie. Written by Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel, starring Henry Winkler, Shelley Long, Michael Keaton, Gina Hecht, Richard Belzer, Vincent Chiavelli, and the lovely, wonderful Joe Spinell. A mild-mannered morgue attendant is assigned to the night shift, and his new coworker, along with his prostitute neighbor, convince him of running a prostitution ring out of the morgue. The Gans who wrote this was the creator of Laverne and Shirley and Joni Loves Chachi, so obviously there's a Howard connection. He and Mandel, who also wrote this, would write Splash, Spies Like Us, Amazing Stories, Parenthood, City Slickers, A League of Their Own, Multiplicity, and Ed TV. Winkler was still playing the Fonz on TV at this time. So this is kind of a chance to break out in a different role. And
That's interesting because in this film, he looks much too old to be playing the Fonz.
He does, doesn't he? Doesn't he?
And that's neither criticism nor compliment. It's just, he looks like an adult.
Right. Shelley Long had just finished her first year of Cheers and also had Curtis Hansen's Losing It with Tom Cruise this same year. And big breakout for Michael Keaton here. This is the one that gave us Michael Keaton. He's amazing in this movie.
He almost got fired for reasons that I don't recall offhand.
Oh, really?
I think initially he didn't, but history won out.
Yeah. Well, this was supposed to be John Belushi, but he said no. And he's just electric. You're like, this guy's going to be a star. Like this is one of those things. Belushi, who said no, died while this movie was in production. So they would have had to use someone else.
Or if you believe in the butterfly theory, maybe he wouldn't have used too much eyeball that night.
True. But yeah, he cracks me up in this, man. He is like 100 miles an hour. There was a scene where they scuffle him and he's so random. Him and Winkler scuffle later in the movie, and like he just says his lines like, "Hey, easy, I'm wearing white." Like,
no, it's a high wire, scene stealing, star making performance.
Yeah, all he had.
It helps that it's supporting role, that he's not the protagonist. So he's basically the devil to the Henry Winkler's angel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, not to step over what you're saying, but yeah, it's absolutely a firecracker of a star-making performance.
And he'd go on to be Mr. Mom the next year, like that, and that would be a big one for him. So yeah, what do you think of Night Shift?
I enjoyed it. I had seen it once many years ago, so this was sort of like watching it for the first time. Obviously, it's a very formulaic picture. It's an uptight, goes by all the rules kind of guy that's not really happy despite living a conventional as expected life, that goes through an adventure, a comic adventure, and realizes that he doesn't want to do what he's supposed to be doing, and he doesn't want to be with who he's supposed to be with, and ends up with an unconventional life at the end. And in that sense, it's fine. Again, Michael Keaton is a live wire. I could joke and say that if more people had seen this film, there'd be less whininess in 1988 about him playing Batman.
Well,
because he's kind of scary, unhinged, in a comedic way,
right?
Especially in the early scenes of this picture when you're first introduced to him.
Well, with Batman, they rushed into production clean and sober. They hurried, put him in that movie and got that out, and so look, he can be dramatic. Which I'd have thought Mr. Mom would have been enough to be like.
Well, that was taken as a broad comedy,
right?
But yeah, I mean, I think most of that complaining just came from people who'd only seen him in Beetlejuice.
Right.
Or maybe like the Dream Team or something. I think that was before.
No, that was after.
That was after.
Yeah, it's 90s.
But anyway, neither here nor there.
No, it's a really fun movie. Like, there's nothing to it. It's another movie where we handle prostitution in a non-judgmental way,
fire and brimstone way. Yeah.
Like there's always the turn of where the guy like is fine with everything until it hits a public part, and then he turns on it as he didn't before, and then has to come to realize I'm the asshole. This is
it's very similar to Ty West X from a couple months ago,
right?
Where the guy is all fine with porn until his girlfriend wants to do a porn scene.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. They're boyfriend girlfriend at that point.
Right.
But and again, that's a trope. That he's fine with her being a prostitute until she still wants to be a prostitute after they've slept together.
Yeah, she shows up the next day. But the thing I love about this movie, as silly as any given character in the film appears, they're all like well-rounded, treated like humans. Even Keaton, who's the weirdo, has a heart, a conscience, gets the situations and all sorts of things. And like, he has no problem with the prostitutes. He's equal. He sees them truly as equal. You see it as a performer. He's able to convey that, which is amazing.
Yes.
And like, he's like, what? She's coming to work. No, yeah, like all that stuff. And you see him and Long on a level that Winkler isn't. And it's like an amazing staged, acted scene where he's an odd person out. And it's like, dude, you were like all fine when one of them, and now you've stepped outside for like 2 seconds and you're all weird about it. But it works. And I just like the way Shelley Long's handled all the other prostitutes and stuff. Like, they get just, it's.
I have to say, I got excited when Richard Belzer shows up at the end, thinking he's a cop. It's the first appearance of Munch.
Well, he's in the beginning too. Yeah.
Yeah. But then he turns out to be one of the mobsters or one of the bad guys.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's random trivia. This was one of his first films.
Yeah. Well, it's got a lot of bits to it too, hidden within it. There's the delivery bit and stuff like that, and then Chevelli shows up as one of his first movies.
Yeah, like right at the he's got a great, very funny bit right at the end.
Mm-hmm. And
that's as normal as I've ever seen him look, by the way.
Yeah.
Just because,
one of the my pick for possibly the greatest character actor of the 70s, Joe Spinells here. He's the first film we've had that he's shown up in. And he's great. And I've thought this the other day. I watched In the Heat of the Night recently again. And I'm like, man, there was something better to movies where we just didn't care about sexiness so much with casting every part and just let people with interesting faces, whether they were handsome or not or something, just an interesting face be in a movie.
If you wanted someone to play the Penguin, you'd hire who looked a lot like Richard Kind, who, with, the worst possible version of Richard Kind. Mm-hmm. You'd hire Richard Kind and put on grody makeup and maybe give him a pillow. Mm-hmm. So instead of hiring Colin friggin' Farrell and turning him into an unrecognizable demon person.
Or who makes a good Fantastic Four thing? Jamie Bell, right? Because in the Heat of the Night, there's the diner guy who winds up being an integral part of the plot, but like he's like, I don't know, he's interesting. Like, I could see somebody in a small town finding him handsome, but he's also like, it's just an interesting face. Joe Spinell's got an interesting face. He's never gonna play a romantic lead in anything or some sexy guy, but he's far more fascinating to just watch him in a frame than next generic blonde stud X that's a lead in a film. Like, these people have character in their face that it's just like Chevelli too, like,
and getting back to Homicide, who played Crossetti, John Pantoliano, is that his?
Joe Pantoliano?
No, I apologize.
But these people. This movie also, I didn't see him, but cameos by Kevin Costner,
John Polito.
Oh, John Polito, yeah,
who is the definition of a guy, character actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now those have to be super sexy.
Yeah.
But like Kevin Costner and Shannon Doherty show up in this movie. Did not see them. One of the prostitutes is Drew Barrymore's mom. And she'd go on to play one of the prostitutes also is Michael Jackson's girlfriend in the Thriller video that will come out later this year. Yeah. But no, this is such a fun movie that it's probably appropriately thought of, but maybe now underseen or cult-ish because time has passed it by.
Yeah. I mean, it was a solid 3-star film in 1981, and it'd be nice if people occasionally stumbled upon it just because it's fun. Again, it shows even from the beginning, Ron Howard was an incredibly eclectic filmmaker in terms of making films that are very good and films that are very bad, and making films of any genre you can think of.
Yeah.
I mean, the same guy that made Parenthood made Ransom. The same guy that made Solo made Rush. The same guy that made The Missing made
Apollo 13.
Apollo 13.
He's a good workman, old school workman, but he's got a little more flourish, but like he doesn't have anything like distinct. He can just get the job done in a classical way.
It's, if anything, his signature is almost a lack of signature.
Right.
In that, whether it's a lack of ego, whether it's just
like I said, but strong professionalism on the screen. Yeah. Like it looks like a well-made film with somebody. There's not some strong vision there, but at least knows how to make an appropriate looking piece of cinema.
Yeah, and with the exception of the Grinch, but everyone's got one of those. But yeah, I mean, he is. I don't want to say he's underrated because he's doing just fine, but he certainly has a ridiculously wide and varied filmography that I find impressive, especially when you look back.
Right. Yeah. And this is his first major release that he has, because Grand Theft Auto was a bit smaller on the Corman scale and stuff. But and this, also seeing the Happy Days stuff continue on through, the people who wrote for those shows at Winkler, who starred in them and continue to be part, because Winkler and Howard worked together multiple times, even through like Arrested Development. Like they would be combining efforts there. The Rod Stewart song, That's What Friends Are For, was later recorded by Dionne Warwick, Gladys Knight, Elton John, and Stevie Wonder, which went number 1 in '86. This is not that version. This is the Rod Stewart version, which I like the synthesized backing on this one quite a bit. It's a nice outro song for this movie. But yeah, nice. It's got one of those, you saw the poster or the VHS box, them crazy getting out of the car and stuff like that. And it's maybe something you never saw, but it's something you should check out if it's playing around or on a streaming service or something like that. Shout Factory put out a good Blu-ray of it a few years ago. And I think you just watch it on YouTube right now. It's just like legit there, like a good copy of it. Cause I don't think it's available. I don't think it's available.
$4 I won't get back.
Yeah.
I didn't check.
Yeah. So I sent you a link.
You might have. That's quite possible.
But yeah, so night shift. But how did it do at the box office this weekend? Scott, let's go to the top 10 for the box office.
Number 1 was once again E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
He's back.
Telling the best little whorehouse in Texas to get the fuck off its lawn, which is exactly how E.T. talks.
They're neck and neck again, though.
Yes, they are pretty close. $10.4 million, a 7% drop in weekend 8, still playing in 1,555 screens, which is wider than any release in the top 16, I guess, by a healthy margin. It has now made $169.5 million, and it's not remotely done yet. In number 2, you have the best little whorehouse in Texas, earning $9 million, dropping a perfectly solid 24% in 1,435 theaters. Those two are the only films playing in more than 1,150 theaters, by the way. It would bring its 10-day total to $28.4 million. It would eventually earn approximately $69.7 million domestic. Coming in at number 3, the limited release of a film we'll be talking about, I assume, next week?
Down the road here, not next.
Okay. I'll leave it to you. Officer and a Gentleman, the Deborah Winger Richard Gere, Lou Gossett Jr., who won an Oscar for the picture. The romantic military melodrama would open with $3.3 million and just 346 screens.
We will talk about it in 2 weeks.
Yes, for a rock solid $9,551 per screen average. Skipping ahead a little bit, it would be a massive smash, earning 130 million by the end of its run. It would be one of the biggest movies of 1982. Yeah, and it would gross more than Star Trek, more than Blade Runner. Again, it drives you nuts when you look at this stuff and the kind of movies that used to make more money than the kind of movies that Hollywood is still desperately trying to turn into a thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, they never made a captain and a gentleman, so.
Although we are getting Top Gun Maverick in a couple weeks, so make of that what you will.
Well, at least with Top Gun Maverick, they knew not to make one without Tom Cruise. They could have easily made Top Guns all through the 90s, but they knew what they had.
I'm pretty sure Paramount was in position of, we're not going to piss off Tom Cruise by doing that.
Right.
Because we need him. And now they still need him for different reasons, but that's a longer conversation. That's why Top Gun Maverick is getting a conventional theatrical window this summer. It's not going to be on Paramount Plus in 45 days.
Right.
I don't know if it's 120 as has been reported here and there, but again, I don't think it's going to be on Paramount Plus in 45 days. This is being recorded in early May, so we'll see what happens by the time you all listen to this.
Right.
For all I know, it's one of summer's biggest hits and it's going to play in theaters forever, or it belly flopped because nobody offside the internet gave a damn and it's on VOD in 60 days. Right. Whatever. Probably somewhere in between there. Number 4, Young Doctors in Love, 2.6 million, down 16% for a $14.2 million 17-day gross. And Night Shift, opening in 683 theaters for a fine, whatever, $2.54 million opening weekend. It would eventually earn approximately 21 million. And again, this is a sign of the times where a film could open with under $4 million and still goes to 20 million, which when you're a star-driven comedy like this that didn't cost $1 gazillion, everybody gets to work again. Rocky 3 will not be killed. 2.4 million in 6th place, down 14%, playing in 1,147 theaters, by far more than any other film other than E.T. and Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So this is really the sleeper biggie other than E.T., obviously.
Yeah.
Other than E.T., it's the sleeper biggie of the summer in terms of franchisee, IP, whatever the hell you want to call it. 96.4 million after 10 weekends. It would eventually earn around 125. World According to Garp would earn 2.4 million. In its second weekend of release, a drop of 18% for 7.1. Six Pack, $2 million, 1.1% up, adding 100 screens.
Power of Kenny.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me what that movie is. I know the movie, but I always forget the title. I always think it's like a bodybuilding movie. No, it's the Boxcar Children with Kenny Rogers flick.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed that. Poltergeist, another leggy picture. A 9th weekend in theaters, $1.8 million, 54.9 so far. And rounding out the top 10 is Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, having been re-released a couple weeks ago. It would earn 1.6 million for a 43% drop after losing 490 theaters for a $12.7 million 17-day re-release total. And then you have Annie, Star Trek 2, Firefox, Tron. Have we talked about Tron yet? Yeah, we did talk about Tron.
Yeah.
I didn't have much to say about Tron.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It got pretty much its own because we put Raiders with it because that was the only release that weekend. Yeah.
And then in 15th place, cannot be killed, cannot be stopped. The Sword and the Sorcerer.
Yes.
With $1.1 million, it went up 15% from last weekend. Yeah. I don't know why it lost 28 theaters, but after 15 weekends in theaters, it has earned $35.4 million. I
wonder if it's being tacked on drive-ins to something or something. I don't know.
That might make sense.
And double bill. I don't know. I don't know what they double bill with it, because usually a new movie and an old movie, but maybe Night Shift and Sword of the Sorcerer. No, that wouldn't.
Directed by Albert Payan, who is not doing it all these days, apparently. So hopefully he'll still be with us by the time you listen to this.
Yep.
If not, R.I.P., condolences, etc.
Yes.
He had a very interesting career.
Yes, he did. So yeah, that's our week, Scott. We're into August. We're in the final month of the summer of 82 at 40.
Countdown.
I don't think that was 82. But before we head out, Scott, let people know where they can keep up with you.
Forbes.com. The ticket booth is the official name of the blog. I'm at Twitter at Scott Mendelson.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUHD. Tune in next week as Scott and I dress like pirates to get high with Cheech and Chong and take in some Pink Floyd. All that and more as the summer of 82 at 40 continues into the first full weekend of August 1982, our final month. Stay full.
It's all led up to this. Do not miss the last 5 minutes. That's probably not true.
The summer of 82 at 40.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of 82 at 40 and News of the Moment themes by Press Maxon. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.